It's Talking to Me. We're your virtual program on authors, thinkers, and the literary life, as always produced by the Southern California News Group. Sorry for the late start today, you guys. We've been doing this for more than 3 years, and we suddenly had technical difficulties. Anyway, I'm Sam Dunn. I'm the senior editor of premium content here. And of course, I have to begin by thanking our Reader Reward subscribers for supporting our programs and our newspapers. If you are a Reader Reward subscriber attending tonight, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate to our partner, Once Upon a Time Bookstore in Montrose. And as always, I have to congratulate our winner from last month. This time it's Glenda Kelly. Glenda, we hope you're enjoying all of those books. And okay, let's get real. If you're not a subscriber yet to one of our local papers, why not? Go to scng.com/subscribe to find your local paper. And that way you'll know all of the great things we've got going on and you'll support local journalism, best of all. Anyway, if you've missed any of our past programs, go to scng.com/virtual programs and check all of those out. Also, check out our cool Bookish swag. Can you believe it? Stylish book nerd apparel for us people. It's great. Before we get started, a few things to remember. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom toolbar right there at the bottom. If you just want to add a comment, use the chat feature found on your screen. And listen, don't worry if you need to get up, do anything. You're not going to miss a thing because a link to the program is going to be sent to you later, hopefully, if we're able to record. If not, just come back next month. The show is also posted at scng.com/virtual events. And again, that's where you can find all of our past virtual shows, not just Bookish, everything else we do, as well as see what's coming up next. Anyway, okay, let's welcome our beloved host, author, performer, and playwright, Sandra Singh Low. Sandra, are you there?
Yes.
Sandra, hello, hello.
Yes, I'm here. Welcome. Oh my goodness, it's so fun to see you. I'm beaming here from New York.
New York?
Ask me why.
Why? Why are you in New York?
I am dog sitting.
Wait.
Yes, I am dog sitting for Jean Henth Corlitt's amazing author of The Plot and the book that made The Undoing on HBO, starring Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. And she's been a guest on Bookish, and also Paul Muldoon, the Pulitzer Prize winning Irish poet and former poetry editor of The New Yorker. But yes, I am dog sitting.
And that you're a dog walker now, so that's very LA of you.
It seems very LA and possibly even very Riverside.
Oh,
There's the pivot going right there. I leave the thinking and the reading and the writing and the doing to others as I dog walk, but I miss Southern California, and I'm so excited about our show today.
Well, today we've got a sneak peek on UC Riverside's 47th Annual Writers Week. It's coming up in February. There's some 52 writers, of which we have 2.
Wait a minute. You said 47th? How could that be? That would be the longest running free literary week in Southern California, in anywhere in California. So I think then we have to go to Tom Lutz, who's on the screen. Okay.
I couldn't have put it better. In fact, it's exactly the way I wrote it.
The whirling, the founder and editor of LARB, Los Angeles Review of Books, and also a distinguished professor of creative writing and chair at the University of Riverside. Tom, tell us about this 47th celebration.
Yeah, we've been doing Writers Week for 47 years, and it started as a kind of classic log rolling academic procedure where one of the poets would invite their 5 poet friends to come and read, and then they would all get invited to that university the next year, and it went on like that for a number of years, and it's been growing partly because my colleague Allison Hedge Koch is taking it over from me, and she's a whirlwind of energy, and she's been getting more and more authors each year. Putting together a more and more interesting program each year, and so we owe a lot of what's happening this year to her. She couldn't be here today, which is why I'm here.
But it's honoring 3 authors in particular. Can you say which authors, including and why? One of whom we have on. Why these 3?
Over the last 10 years, we started this with the Los Angeles Review of Books because I knew somebody there at LA Review of Books, and so Riverside and LA Review of Books started together to give an annual Lifetime Achievement Award. And the first one went to John Recchi, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, people who are associated with LA and Riverside and Southern California, and who we thought should be recognized for the work that they've done over a lifetime. In the last few years, we've been giving, I think it started with one that we called Laureate Palooza, because we had 3 poet laureates on, was Juan Felipe Herrera and Rita Dove and the third one. Well, I'm forgetting. Anyway, we had 3 poet laureates on, and it was and ever since we've been doing 3 a year, because there's a lot of great writers, and obviously this year Rigoberto is one of them. Rigoberto has the distinction of being our first Lifetime Achievement Award who went to the University of California at Riverside as an undergraduate, and so that's a nice full circle event. The other 2 this year are Quincy Troop, poet, memoirist, biographer, theater runner, nonprofit maker, Black Arts Movement founder, kind of amazing guy who's done a lot of great things, and Dave Eggers, who most people know as a novelist, but is also a memoirist and also a great literary citizen who's started a number of nonprofits to help advance literacy in all sorts of ways.
And Dave Eggers has such a Southern California placement to him. Was it Pomona that he was at for? Like people don't often think of him like associated with Southern California, but he really was.
Yeah, he's more a Bay Area guy. He started in the Bay Area. He started is one of his 826 LA, which is an after-school writing literature program on Sunset near downtown, and he has 826 operations in a number of cities around. Really important, great work. But his LA presence is mostly 826. And the rest of him is Bay Area, which is why he's got all those Silicon Valley novels, among other things.
Well, also with founding the Los Angeles Review of Books, and your own books are you have a bent of for instance, you, Tom, some of your topics and themes are aimlessness, or your cultural history doing nothing, a history of loafers, loungers, slackers, bums, wins the American Book Award. Crying, the natural and cultural history of tears, a New York Times notable book. American Nervousness. It seems to me in your own work, there's also real playfulness of like West Coast versus, not West Coast versus East Coast. And Samantha, you can jump in here too, because it is a panel discussion. You're from New Mexico, I'm from California, Samantha, that there's this traditional thing of New York being this hub, and I'm in it right now, of where literature happens. But in fact, it happens everywhere. And I wonder if there's some resonance to you with the Los Angeles Review of Books and Riverside, that is the West, I'm not saying thumbing their nose against the East, where I'm at now, but is there a resonance for you around this whole theme?
Absolutely. I mean, I was a literary scholar first, and one of the things I studied was American regionalism. And Hamlin Garland in the 1890s wrote, the literary center of gravity is moving from Boston and New York. It's moving west. He thought it was right around Buffalo when he was writing, and on its way to Chicago, and would continue until it was the center of gravity was the center of the country. That has never happened because New York has continued to have a real, obviously dominant position in the publishing industry. And therefore people still look to New York. But LA Review of Books was founded directly in line with Hamlin Garland's view that a more representative literature is a better literature.
I'm feeling like Rigoberto has been nodding a lot. So,
Yeah.
Rigoberto, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, I've been a New Yorker since 1998. So, and as a California boy, and let me tell you, it's unlike many folks in New York City. Like I do leave New York a lot. I do go to the West Coast, and it's interesting to me because as soon as you leave New York, all of a sudden you feel that how regional even New York City is, as much as such a worldly hub it is, and how the entire world looks in New York City. But as soon as you're out of New York City, you realize it's just this one little spot that energy is really much alive. The mythology is alive, but once you leave, you realize, the world is much, much bigger, um, interesting in other ways. And I say this because one of the things that people asked me said, well, when are you going to start writing about New York City? Because everybody, so a writer moves to New York City, they start writing about it, in 2 weeks. And I think up until now, I've been here in New York City now, I think 20 something years. Not really. I mean, a little bit, but I'm still very much, my work is set in Southern California, the border, even after all these decades.
I have a
So,
question for you. Oh, I have a question for you, Rigoberto. You're from originally Bakersfield, right?
yes,
And another famous poet, I don't know what it is in the water in the valley there, but Frank Bedard is also from the poet.
yes,
Bedard is also from Bakersfield.
absolutely.
What is it about this regionalism? I mean, I'm thinking of, forgive me, my dog is now barking at me. What is it that fuels your creative energy? Why is it when you close your eyes you're always thinking of California or Mexico? I know from some of your
Yeah,
other.
absolutely. Well, I think Sandra alluded to this, that it's very cold and snowy outside right now. So there's nothing takes me back to better weather and better landscapes than this kind of weather here that we have. But also, it's I think it was Gloria Saldua who said, you take home with you wherever. Memory is home, home is memory. And so as the farther away you are from home, the closer you want to get to it. And I think it's been that way for me. And incidentally, I actually did talk to Frank Bedard, and we kind of connected on that. It's we don't have any other connection to Bakersfield other than having been born there, but at the same time, it's you can't help but feel that it's a beloved space anyway. Even though we neither of us necessarily grew up there, we were just born there, but it was a nice kind of connection to have. It's like, oh, Frank, I was born in Bakersfield as well, so that was kind of fun. But going back to this issue I always zip back to California in my mind, in my creativity, because I missed it, and I can't wait to go back as soon as I retire. I've been saying this now for like 5 years, and I was saying it for another 8. By the time I retire, that I'm gonna go back, and I already got my little home there in Moreno Valley.
Hilarious. Well, Lisa Teasley, we're going to bring you in now, and it's a very I love the way this conversation is going. It's different than our downloads and our segmented stuff. It's a conversation, and we'll do the bios after. But Lisa, what are you thinking when you hear this discussion? Do you have a sense of your home? And you're a person whose work has been translated into French, Spanish, Italian, Chinese, and Arabic. I mean, you're actually a citizen of many lands and places in a way. What do you think of when you hear this discussion?
Well, I'm an LA native. I was born and raised here, and I lived in New York in the 90s. And I went to UCLA and I started publishing in lit mags so it was like 83. And then by the time, like around 88, a William Morris agent approached me with my first novel, shopped it everywhere in New York. I moved to New York in 92, and no one could understand what to do with a Black female writer who's not writing. Well, back then they said it very rudely, like all the houses said, like, what are we going to do? There's no ghetto characters, there's no all of that. And
Oh
so
my God.
I didn't get my first book deal until I came back to LA in 2002 with the small press Kuhn Cume Press, based in Seattle, and then ended up at Bloomsbury when they bought the paperback rights and did both my novels. So yes,
So
I
Seattle,
moved back to LA in '99.
okay, so can we start as a starting point say, so Los Angeles is a good place
A good
for
place.
literature.
Great
So
place.
Tom,
Here I am
you
in
like
LA.
that? Do you like that, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place for literature. And of course, so many writers who get drawn to Hollywood are drawn because they were originally playwrights, or they were novelists, or they were even poets. So there's all of the writing that's going on in LA that's screen related, fuels the sense of writerly energy in the area too. But I will say that, when as I was listening to that conversation, the first part of it, I was thinking that Lisa is, as you said from her translation, she's a cosmopolitan writer, as is Rigoberto. These are, and my point in my work about regionalism was always that, yeah, writers focus on places that they know, in the same way that they focus on people that they know, and focus on philosophical conundrums that they know. But they are writing to the world. They're writing in the context of the world. Right? Rigoberto is no more writing about Bakersfield than I'm writing about New Jersey, where I was born. So we are not writing about it, writing to it. Right? We're not writing to. I'm not writing to New Jersey. Rigoberto's not writing to Bakersfield. Lisa's not writing to Los Angeles, except also to them, because we're writing to the whole world. The literature is a cosmopolitan genre.
So in fact, as
creative activity.
opposed to the New York review of books, the Los Angeles review of books is this, and you can probably finish the sentence better, is sort of like experiencing sort of cultural immediacy of where you are, but sort of transitioning it for a global audience. I'm sure you can say that
Yeah.
better than me.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like that. That was good. I don't see anything wrong with that. I do think that we all try to write to some sense of the better world that's out there. To the extent that LA is for a lot of us the better world than the one we grew up in, we're writing more to Los Angeles than we are to in my case, Ticky-Tack, New Jersey. But and Los Angeles has a culture. We're all impacted by that culture, and that culture is much less hierarchical. I'm sure Rigo can talk to this as well. Or Lisa from her time there, much less hierarchical than New York culture. It's not all the same kind of status anxiety. And so we end up with a different kind of a sense of what's worth writing about, what's worth writing to, what's right in the context of. So it's the culture impacts us, but it's not just because we're writing about or for Los Angeles.
So to jump to Lisa for a moment, I think that's very well said. So let's dive into a couple of specifics here. For instance, and we're following this arc like, okay, so Lisa, you've been the writer and presenter of the BBC television documentary High School Prom. How
did that happen? So it was a complete
Prom,
surprise.
Okay, so give us words around this.
So BBC television, the director and producer there read my first book, came to me through my website and said, we would like you to be one of 4 American writers who introduce the British culture to American culture. And they had chosen the art world, they had chosen prom, which is what they chose me to do. Also gated communities in California. And then because Brokeback Mountain was very big back then, they chose Montana cowboys, or like not Montana, but cowboys, California cowboys. So, and there wasn't even an interview process. It was just like, you have it. So it was completely a complete surprise, just like in the same way that I was approached last year to write an opera libretto because they had read my work and decided I was their librettist. So I feel like because I've loved and adored fiction and known ever since I was 5 years old that this is what I was going to do, that in doing it, no matter what, it's attracted these adventures, these very unexpected, beautiful adventures. So that's what I'm working on now as a libretto. I just turned in the second draft, and the premiere will be 2025. So
Fantastic. So multi-genre. Samantha, you had a question?
I have two questions actually, one for Rigoberto and one for Lisa, specifically about the conference and what we do when we have these public events and we're inviting in the community at large. Rigoberto, I will admit I've been a writer and an editor my entire life, but poetry still scares the bejesus out of me sometimes. It's a little like, woo, it's too smart, it's too writerly, right? What is your intention when you do events like this, and what can we expect from Writers Week in terms of poetry?
You know, I've always felt kind of sad that that's the case for many people. That poetry is a scary thing because the exposure that we usually get in school is, the dead poets that are writing. I mean, it's important to read them, but at the same time, for many of us, they're so far away in time and in place, and so few times are we exposed to contemporary poets. And let me tell you a very brief story. The first year I was in Riverside, 1988, so 1989 was my first Writers Week, and I remember going to one of these readings, and all of a sudden, I realized that writers were alive. All this time, I thought writers were dead. All the books that I read in high school had a birth date and a death date. So I thought, okay, books are written by dead people. So when I sat down and this woman is reading this story, and I realized, wait a minute, she's the author. She wrote it. It was like my head almost exploded. And this was me as a 18-year-old kid, all of a sudden realizing that actually writers are alive. They're living. And so I think there's ways in which these conferences can offer maybe not necessarily those big insights, but interacting with an audience, talking around the poem and not just letting the poem live on the page, breathing some life, breathing story, breathing history into what we have to say on the stage is important because we're humanizing, we're connecting, and that's the best experience to have. And I felt that every single Writers Week that I was in Riverside, 1988 to 1982, and I never missed it because it was always a discovery there, always an education for me, not only in terms of understanding that people could actually make a living writing, but that people were interested in reading what people that were alive were writing, So it's
As opposed to Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock.
Yes, important.
I don't love that poem, but it's great. I love it. And Lisa, girl, you and I have done many a panel together at various events throughout Southern California. And I'm just, I know what I get out of it, but let's talk a little bit about what we as writers get from hanging out with our colleagues, what that culture does for the writing and the community itself.
It's so nourishing because this is to me, it's such a lonely profession, just like sitting by myself. I'm sitting at my desk, which is my breakfast nook. And this is just like my little tiny world, and I feel so alone and when I go outside, it's just like, wow, there is life. So at a panel and at festivals and like at Writers Week, to be around other writers and even that unspoken communion that happens besides all the laughter and all of the getting to enjoy one another in real time after having read one another, all of that to me is so important. Yeah. So important.
Great.
Yeah. I guess I would love to just add to that there were a couple Writers' Weeks. One where I ended up sitting with Lisa in the parking lot for about an hour after our event, and one where we had dinner at Mission Inn with Rigoberto and friends. And so there's a whole, right, part of it is the time on the stage, part of it is the time in the wherever the green room is, like at the LA Times Book Festival, and part of it is just having those moments to kind of catch up and feel like you're part of a community.
Yes.
Yeah. I also, when Rigoberto said that he realized that writers were alive, I grew up reading the New York Times Book Review because my parents got the New York Times on Sundays, and I just was attracted to the book review, and it's really my introduction to literary life. And I knew that they were alive, but I didn't think that you would ever actually meet any of them. They lived in a different kind of world. I didn't. So that moment when you meet your first author that is a real author is a major event in most of our lives, I think, wherever we come from. And I remember it so clearly. It was when I started going to college in my late 20s, and I realized that I heard my professors talking about writers that they had actually met, and then I thought, this is possible.
Sandra, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was speaking. Sorry, I was so excited. In that vein, I want to point out Gonzalez, and we've done your bios in a strange order and broken up, etc. But you're also the author of 2 bilingual children's books, Antonio's Card, La Tarjeta de Antonio, and pardon my murdering of the language, and Soledad, Soledad, Suspiro. So you also were interested in writing children's books. So given what Tom has said of like how important is it, and that's a softball question of but introducing literature to children and making it accessible to them and reaching out, what does that mean for you?
Well, as somebody who was the reader in the family, every time I teach my students and I tell them, there is so much truth in the idea that literature does save lives, and I can tell you as evidence, I present myself. I said, and I never really told any of those writers who saved my life that. So trust that when you write, you're going to save somebody's life, but you're not going to know about it. But just trust that that's going to happen, right? And so I think that as a young man, trying to find a place of my own in a very crowded household, trying to find my way through this language that I didn't understand was important. And also just trying to find some privacy and space in which I could imagine, because all around me, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of heartbreak, a lot of heartache. So I had to find some place that wasn't necessarily the television, because we had a terrible television with only 2 channels. So I couldn't count on that. So I thought, well, there's this other thing, and books. And I've been so blessed. And I always thank, whenever I receive any kind of award, I thank my teachers and I thank the librarians who were so instrumental in identifying me as one of these shy kids that's moving around, not necessarily lost, but here, let me point you out to this book and that book. So I think it's important to have literature accessible for not only the shy kid, but to the kid that doesn't know he needs it. Because I've seen those connections too. Just like at readings, all of a sudden somebody discovers they hear something in a poem or in a story, and all of a sudden an interest is piqued, and they gravitate toward this thing called literature. So I think it's very important.
And how about you, Lisa? Does that resonate for you?
Oh,
Entirely.
I was going to say that I owe so much to my teachers. From my first grade teacher, who commended me on the essay about the owl that my mother saved when the owl flew into the window, all to my my college professor, all the way through my high school journalism teacher. All of their encouragement meant everything to me. So I feel like teaching is such an important, teachers make such a huge difference in all of their students' lives, whether it's very, very, very beneficial or even too detrimental. It's a big influence that a teacher has. So I always, when I'm teaching a class, I try and I see teaching as loving, like the teaching, that verb equals loving to me.
I'm so moved by what everybody has said. I just want to say that is part of what's so amazing to me about Writers Week. No matter who you are, you can just go. It's free.
Just show up.
Show up, and the teaching is there. Just absorb the words,
Open to the public. So let's go down the summary of how people get to Riverside and where do they go? Okay, to like viewers watching who went. It's in February. So Tom, tell us.
Yeah, well, first of all, you can go by just going online to Writers Week, and everything is available online as in streaming. So everybody has access wherever they are at any time. To go to the live events, you go to the Riverside campus, University Drive. There's one main parking lot, number one, the main parking lot when you come onto campus. And you go up to the little booth and they give you a free pass for the parking. And then there are signs that direct you across campus. So it really couldn't be easier to get there. University Drive, parking lot one, follow the signs.
And when people go onto and they see the program, I mean, do they pick and choose panels, or is there a way to slide your way through, or and what do you think, Lisa? So how are you going to navigate your way through this week
Well, so my event is on Valentine's Day, which is so easy to remember in Jefferson. Yes.
And so talk about your panel. Talk about that. What's the talk about that.
I don't want to. I just want to get everyone right. So Allison Moon is our host, and then my co-panelists are Karina Byrne, Marcia Della O, and Melissa Studdard, and we'll be talking about poetry and fiction.
Yeah, some of the panels are directed at a genre. They're all novelists, so they're all poets, and a lot of them are mixed genres as well. So it's a great way to get a sense of what's going on in the world of writing, from the people who like Justin Torres, who just won the National Book Award for fiction, and kind of our star writers like the two that were with us today, to people who are just starting out, and just in some cases they're doing their first major reading at the event, and in some cases like in Quincy's or Dave Eggers, they're international figures that have been doing this all their lives, but it's a real mix of every level and every genre, and from every community. It's a real buffet, all you can eat buffet.
And Rigoberto, tell us about what panel what you're doing.
Am I on a panel?
Panel
Grand Poobah.
Yes.
You're a Grand Poobah.
Okay.
Honoree.
So mix
Yes.
you on a pat, there's no hierarchy. So
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, in this case, there is a little bit of a hierarchy, I have to admit, because Rigoberto and Quincy Troop and Dave Eggers are together to receive their awards, and that's a single event. It's on Thursday night.
I have one final question for all three of you. Now, we know your panels, we know the vibe, but what are each of you really looking forward to in this week? What's on your must-do list?
I'm just excited to see who I see, who I get to see, it's just
Catching up with old friends and meeting new people.
Yes,
Totally.
absolutely.
Rigoberto, are you going to have Tom take you out to Mission Inn again? What's the deal?
Why not? Why not? But you know what? I really just want to reconnect with that energy. I mean, that was my first sort of important education in terms of the literary life, Writers Week. And I think I attended after the release of my first book. And my first book was released in 1999. So it's been a while. So now coming back after so many other books, in a different stage of my career, just going back and seeing this, being reminded of this incredible, magical place where who knew Who knew? There I am, sitting in the audience, listening to these wonderful folks read their work, and next thing you know, I'm an honoree. So it's a quite an amazing journey that I want to recognize just by reconnecting with that energy in that space.
I love
And
that.
for me, there's something very similar because this is a real passing of the torch event for me. This is my last one, my last Writers Week, unless at some point they want to give me a Lifetime Achievement Award or something. But it's and there is a real sense of that passing of the torch for me because Maceo Montoya is going to be there, and Maceo has just taken over editing Huizache, a great, originally Texas-based literary magazine from Dagoberto Gilb, who was having dinner with us at the Mission Inn back at on that earlier occasion. But now it's Maceo's magazine. Dagoberto has passed it on. I passed on Los Angeles Review of Books to Medea Ocher, who's the new editor in chief, and so it's a kind of graduation ceremony for me.
That's awesome.
It's so moving and thrilling for everyone to be on. I'm just going to say, Samantha, before we take out, that it is the University of California, Riverside's 47th annual Writers Week Festival for February 10th and February 12th through 16th at the campus of University of California, Riverside, or online. Samantha, do you want to add any? And it's really an incredibly special and extraordinary Southern California literary event.
Yeah, and I know that we've got coverage in our newspapers coming up, so watch for that. And speaking of which, thank you everybody. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Rigoberto. Thank you, Lisa. As always, amiga, Sandra, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. And before we say anything else, we have to thank our production manager, Julie Corlett. She's the Oz behind the curtain. Nothing would happen without her. And we hope you've really enjoyed this preview of UCR's Writers Week. Please join us again for next month's Bookish. We've got lots of surprises, as always. If you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or if you have additional questions, please email us at events@scng.com. And if you want to give me suggestions on the show directly, reach me at sdunn@scng.com. And remember, you don't have to wait until our next show for great content on authors. Sign up for Books editor Erik Pedersen's Book Pages newsletter. And speaking of Erik, here's a message from him on what's coming up in our newspapers. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you had a good time. This weekend in the paper, we've got Julie Chavez talking about her book, Everyone But Myself. It is about her struggle with anxiety. I think you might find it a really meaningful conversation. We've also got In the Book Pages, which is available right now. That's the newsletter I do. There is an upcoming event at Skylight Books, and I talked to some of the people involved. It is a celebration of writing about California farm workers, and some of the writers are California farm workers or from families that have done farm work. It's really fascinating. The work is great. I hope that you'll check that out. We've also got a Q&A with Ed Brubaker, who is he has written all kinds of comics. He's also got a new TV series that is going into production. He does the Q&A, and he talks about Where the Body Was, his latest graphic novel. And we've also got a link to, which you may know by now, but you may not. Romans and Book Soup have announced that they are for sale. Kevin Smith got the story for us. You can read that there as well. Thanks for letting me on here, and I hope you all have a good weekend. Take care. Bye.
Take care, everybody.